All right, if you've just tuned in, we're talking about the US blocking a demand for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. 13 other members of the UN Security Council voted in favour of that draft resolution put forward by the UAE, while Britain abstained. To discuss, we're joined by Senior Research Fellow and Director of AFRASID, that's Thembisa Fakude. Thembisa, thank you as always. So basically, everybody said yes, so the US said no, and Britain said nothing. How do you think history will judge those moves?
Well, set there in history. Empathy for the Holocaust and victims of Holocaust will be thrown out the window henceforth. Empathy for the victims of Russian aggression in Ukraine will be thrown out of the window henceforth. The seriousness of the United Nations Security Council now in doubt. Many people do not really, or henceforth not going to really take this very important platform seriously. So it's quite a sad day in history to see a country that purports to be a defender of democracy and justice taking such a stance. So yeah, it's quite a sad day in history to be seeing the United States basically and tacitly encouraging the continuing bombardment of the people of Gaza.
Do you have any sympathy at all for the stance of the US, or Israel for that matter? The US saying that this would be an unsustainable ceasefire that will only plant the seeds for the next war. Hamas doesn't recognize the very existence of Israel. The idea is that it would give Hamas time to regroup. Can there ever be a ceasefire that leads to peace, given the stance of the two players in this war?
I think they can. I think there's a possibility. But you and I are a bit afraid about politics, language, and technicalities that are involved in these kind of things or in these kind of negotiations. But unfortunately, people on the street and on the ground and those who are watching us from home want to see a communication that is saying sense has prevailed and we are seeking to stop this war. And then we can look at the technicalities and nuances of that agreement, including language, later on. But to say no openly in a report that's less than 5 minutes to the world is not really helpful for the United States nor Israel. People want to hear some hope coming from the leader of the democratic world coming up to say, we are saying ceasefire now. Having said that, we want the following, not the other way around, to say we are saying no to ceasefire because of the following. That is not one would have expected from a country sophisticated United States of America.
The UAE said quite powerfully, what message does this send to civilians around the world? On the other hand, some have suggested that Hamas is supported in Gaza. The tunnels were found below the hospital, as Israel had claimed. What is your response to the rhetoric or the belief that we hear sometimes that does suggest there are very few innocents who don't support Hamas in Gaza? What's your response?
Well, the response is that you have Gazans who have been confined in that small little open prison from 2007. And one will expect, of course, that like anyone else in the world who is oppressed from 2007 to resist. How they resist, of course, that's the discussion many people are having, and some, of course, condemning how Hamas is carrying out that resistance. But the right for them to resist the oppression that has been imposed on them for all those years is supported by many people around the world, particularly in the Middle East. So that's the first point. But I think also at the same time, you have countries such as United Arab Emirates playing double standards. This is the very same country that has recognized Israel and continued to the dislike of many in Gaza and in the West Bank of its decision to normalize relations with Israel. It was one of the first countries. So I think, again, the resolution was again trying to whitewash the United Arab Emirates. But where we stand at the moment, I think the entire world from all sides, by the way, there are a sizable number of Jewish people, including the Israelis, who are calling for ceasefire. They are all saying it's time for both factions to begin talking. But we see a tone-deaf United States that seeks to perpetuate what's going on in Gaza and is not capable of really communicating its rejection of the proposed resolution.
Very quickly, what now for the United Nations? I mean, according to the Secretary General, this was about the UN Security Council stopping something that is a threat to the global order, to global peace and security, and it hasn't.
Well, the United Nations is rapidly becoming irrelevant. They haven't done much over the past at least 20 years or so in trying to stop the wars that are currently happening around the world, including the conflict in Ukraine. In Africa, you had a number of coups. So it's becoming more and more relevant. It's becoming more of a relief agency than a Security Council that is committed in solving the problems of the world. So it's going to be even more relevant, I think, when the dust settles in Gaza. People are going to start looking for regional solutions, and they're going to start looking at regional platforms in trying to solve their own problems.
All right, thank you for your take, Senior Research Fellow and AFRASID Director Thembisa Fakude.